Theosophical Society in America of 38 years, and also a member of the Blavatsky Lodge of the TS in London, England. A graduate of Claregate College of England, a staff member who teaches internationally. David Zimmerman here today to talk to us about ancient history, new science, glimpses of the future. It will be a look at the occult history of mankind, the new science of the future, and how it will impact the future of the world. Please welcome David.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? There's a lot of misinformation floating around in the world these days about such things as 2012 and a lot of very negative ideas. We in the esoteric are very grateful and very hopeful for the future of mankind and are very positive in the future development of mankind as we are approaching the Aquarian age. We want to recall the story of Pandora's box. And if you remember the story of Pandora, she was given this box by her father Zeus, who was the god of all of the gods of antiquity. And she was told to never open the box. And there was kind of a trick behind it as far as Zeus was concerned, because he thought that her husband would be the one who would open the box, and he would suffer the wrath of that which was in the box. But instead, while Pandora's husband slept, she got the key and opened the box. And as she opened the lid of the box, all of the evils of the world spewed out. And horrified by it, she went to her husband and told him what she had done. And he went to the box with her, and they opened it again, and there was one last thing that was left in the box. Does anybody know what that was? Hope. Remember that when people start telling you about all the negative crap that's spewing out all over the world about 2012 and December 21st, it's the winter solstice. And the Aztecs and the Mayans, they had to end their calendar somewhere. And what it is, we believe in the English ashram, the school that I represent, is that it is the astronomical beginning of the Aquarian age. One of the things that was happening in the New Age, and while I was at General Motors, it became very apparent to me as a student of the occult and of the esoteric, was we were beginning to employ technologies in what was really a very right-brain process, designing cars. And for years, we still do, design them in clay. They're sculpted by artists, guys like me. Both the inside and the outside of the car, the interior and the exterior. But in recent years, about 15 years ago, we began to develop a new technology, almost exclusively at General Motors. It's now used throughout the world, but it involves computers, it involves animation, it involves what we call math data, and we build these in a tube in this computer, and then the machine mills the car out. What does all this mean? What it means is that process that was once almost exclusively a right brain feature is now blending both the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain, which is a unique thing. It was very difficult for me to make the transition as an old guy into the new technology, but I was amazed at how many of the young kids that we were hiring in at General Motors at Design Center seemed to be able to function in both worlds. And that's what we have to do as disciples. All of us are disciples. Dwal Kuhl, the author of the Alice Bailey books, who telepathically communicated those books to Alice Bailey. How many of you have ever read any of them? Good. He said in the opening extract, in the statement from the Tibetan, that he was a disciple of a certain degree, and all are disciples, from the humblest aspirant up to and beyond the Christ himself. We need to think of ourselves as disciples. We are disciples. And we need to try to live in both worlds, the physical world and in the spiritual. One of the recent finds, I don't know how recent it really is, I think in the 1950s, maybe even a little earlier than that, sponge divers off the coast of Greece found a miraculous instrument called the Antikythera mechanism. They didn't know what it was, but they knew that it was certainly very unique. It was X-ray photographed, and an Englishman built a replica of it. It may have been the first real computer, but it was complex, and it had a purpose. And it appeared to observers that it was a device that would show the movement of the planets. And if you're an astrologer, you know how important that is. I believe that it was probably an early system, they're accrediting, what's his name, Archimedes, with the development of this instrument. And I believe that it was used to cast horoscopes 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It's interesting because in the line of work that I do, now teaching on a regular basis, things as abstruse as esoteric astrology, which is the astrology of the soul, and we are told that this astrology that's being reborn into the world through people like Alice Bailey and Douglas Baker and others, that this will be the astrology of the Aquarian age of the future. And that when young children grow up and go to school, their horoscope will be cast. And the guidance counselor in the new age will be trained in things like esoteric psychology and esoteric astrology, and they will be able to chart the course and the path for the development of the children, which, unlike us who beat our heads against the wall for eons, it seems, before we ever felt comfortable with what we were doing in our lives. So this instrument very easily could be such a device to chart horoscopes. Even the scientists are beginning to believe that. One of the things that was going to happen as we reach into the future, into the new age, is there will be miraculous discoveries that will take place in the world. Just recently, in the last month and a half, X-ray photographs were taken over the Egyptian desert. Hey, this was on Fox News. Yeah, if you heard it, raise your hand. They found 17 pyramids buried under the sand. So we say in the school that I represent, mostly because Baker has the ability to see both the past and the future, that this ancient pyramid will be photographed by probably some sort of a technology that's developed by the military, and they'll be able to photograph from above down through it, and they will find that at a height of 50 stones up, was the original pyramid. It was truncated. It was not completed to the height of a capstone. And that on that surface are engraved astrological glyphs and signs of planets. And that they had a very ancient form of astrology which parallels the new astrology, what we call esoteric astrology. I had an experience. It wasn't your typical out-of-body experience, but it was an experience where, through a type of conscious mediumship and a bilocation through the Akashic record, that I stood here in what is called the Grand Gallery and was made aware of the fact that when that pyramid was truncated, that this Grand Gallery, which is really inexplicable, was a crude telescope. And that they could, in broad daylight, look out through the sky into the heavens as if it were night. They were astrologers and astronomers. At the same time that I was having this experience, Baker was lecturing about it, unbeknown to me, in Italy, describing the exact same thing. There it is. It's built at about 45-degree angle, and what they had were lenses that moved up and down on a trolley in what's called the Grand Gallery. Interesting to think about. Later, because in my experience of the Akashic record, I was aware that I had traveled back to about 75,000 years. Blavatsky says in The Secret Doctrine that the pyramid is about 80,000 years old. It wasn't built by the Egyptians. It was built by the Atlanteans. There's the truncated pyramid. Atlanteans. That's what it looked like. And that flat surface on top was an observatory. What we don't show there is the opening where the Grand Gallery or the telescope had its opening. But the whole idea of astrology is that it is a very ancient science, and it's going to be reborn in the new age, and it's beginning to happen. It's very prominent in Europe, where the college that I represent is active. The whole idea of the concept of man and God will take on a new meaning through the astrology by virtue of the fact that it will allow, in the Aquarian age, it will allow us to create new religions. Religions that will be religions of orientation. Man in his relationship to God. New art. The fourth ray energy of art and harmony through conflict will begin to emerge at the writings of Dwal Kul, the Tibetan master, and Alice Bailey and others are correct. That this new fourth ray energy that's coming will create a new renaissance in the world that Leadbeater, Bailey, certainly Baker, others have talked about. That it will make the Renaissance of 500 years ago look like child's play.